Okay, picture this. It's the year 1923. We're in Egypt. Inside Cairo's Continental Hotel, a wealthy British lord is thrashing in his bed, suffering from a severe fever, literally gasping for breath. At exactly 1:55 a.m., he takes his final breath. But here is where the story gets truly terrifying. At that exact moment, the entire power grid of Cairo just completely fails. The whole city is plunged into total darkness. And it gets crazier. Thousands of miles away in England, this lord's pet dog suddenly starts howling, and moments later, she drops dead too. Welcome to this explainer. Today we are going to unravel the real story of the mummy's curse and the 22 deaths that absolutely shocked the world.
See, just months before his horrifying death, this very lord had actually funded the opening of a 3,000-year-old tomb. And, according to the legend, resting right outside that tomb was this chilling warning. Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the pharaoh. So, you take this supposed ancient text, combine it with an incredible archaeological discovery, and, well, it fueled an absolute public hysteria that spread across the globe like wildfire.
Section 1. The Greatest Discovery. To really understand the curse, we first have to understand the discovery itself. Back in November 1922, a British archaeologist named Howard Carter was digging through the sand and rocks of Egypt's Valley of the Kings. Now, Carter wasn't your typical elite scholar, right? He was the sickly son of an animal painter, but he was completely, relentlessly driven. Funded heavily by the wealthy aristocrat Lord Carnarvon, Carter had spent 15 long years and roughly the modern equivalent of £500,000 searching for a forgotten pharaoh named Tutankhamun. Lord Carnarvon had actually warned Carter that this was his absolute last season of funding. And then, right at the 11th hour, they finally found a hidden stairway leading down to a sealed royal door.
When Carter chipped a little hole in that door and peered inside, he famously declared he saw wonderful things. And honestly, that was a huge understatement. Inside, perfectly preserved, were 5,398 priceless objects. I mean, we're talking about a 10-kilogram solid gold death mask, a dagger literally forged from a meteorite, solid gold coffins, chariots, the whole shebang. Everything sat exactly as it was left 3,000 years prior. It was arguably the greatest archaeological discovery in human history. Section 2. Birth of the Curse. Okay, let's dive into this. Because the moment this incredible news reached the outside world, very eerie things began to happen. And this right here is where the legend of the curse was truly born. The creepy coincidences kicked off in 1922, shortly after they opened it up. So Howard Carter kept a golden canary as a pet. One day, his assistant heard a scream from the birdcage. When he ran over to look, a cobra had slithered inside and eaten the canary. Now, to the local Egyptian workers, the cobra was a massive symbol of Egyptian royalty. They immediately believed the dead king's cobra had taken revenge. Then, jump to March 1923, Lord Carnarvon gets bitten by a mosquito on his cheek, accidentally slices the bite open while shaving, and it becomes severely infected. By April 5th, Carnarvon is dead at 1:55 a.m., the exact moment that Cairo blackout happened, followed by his dog Susie dying in England. You have to admit, the timing was horrifying. Section 3. 22 Victims of the Pharaoh. Naturally, the media completely lost its mind. Newspapers worldwide started blasting headlines about the curse of the pharaoh. Even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, yes, the famous creator of Sherlock Holmes, publicly stated that an evil elemental spirit might have caused Lord Carnarvon's illness. And look, when one of the world's most famous logical thinkers tells the press the curse is real, the public is definitely going to listen. Over the next 6 years, the number 22 came to completely define this tomb. 22 people, either directly or indirectly associated with the opening of Tutankhamun's tomb, met untimely, tragic, or just downright bizarre ends.
And these deaths were truly shocking. Get this, the radiologist who x-rayed the mummy? He died suddenly. An American financier visited the tomb and died of a fever the very next day. Lord Carnarvon's secretary died of a blood clot, and when his 78-year-old father heard the news, he actually leaped to his death from a 7th-floor apartment in London. And then, there's the darkest irony of the whole situation. Arthur Weigall, the very journalist who aggressively promoted the curse in the Daily Mail, died of a fever in Egypt, becoming the 21st victim on the list. You can't make this stuff up.
It's incredibly compelling, isn't it? Like, if we just stopped right here, you'd probably walk away completely convinced that ancient Egyptian magic was a real thing. But that's not what we do here.
We need to look closer at the facts. We really have to ask, was the curse actually real? Let's strip away all those sensational newspaper headlines and look at the actual data.
Section 4. The True Boy King. To debunk this phantom, we first have to meet the actual Boy King. The media loved painting Tutankhamun as this all-powerful, dark sorcerer striking down his enemies from beyond the grave. But the biological reality? Well, it tells a much more tragic story.
Yeah, the biological reality is far from magical. Tutankhamun's parents were actually brother and sister, which was a pretty common practice in Egyptian royalty, but it led to some terrible genetic issues. Tutankhamun suffered from a severe clubfoot. He literally couldn't walk a single step without assistance, which, by the way, is exactly why Carter found 130 walking sticks inside his tomb. He also suffered from Kohler's bone disease, which causes extreme pain, and modern autopsies revealed he had multiple severe malaria infections. He wasn't some dark wizard. He was just a frail, sickly teenager who died around the age of 18 or 19 due to a combination of these terrible ailments.
Section 5. Debunking the myth. Now that we know who King Tut really was, it is time to systematically dismantle these famous coincidences using data, logic, and medical science. Let's get into it.
Let's start with that famous blackout. The myth claims it was supernatural retaliation at the exact moment of Carnarvon's death, right? But the historical reality? In the 1920s, Cairo's electrical infrastructure was incredibly unreliable. Frequent, completely undocumented power grid failures were just an everyday occurrence. It was nothing more than a spooky coincidence that the power tripped right around the time Carnarvon passed away.
Okay, what about the howling dog dying at the exact same moment? Well, this is where basic geography breaks the myth. Carnarvon died at 1:55 a.m. Cairo time. The dog Susie died at 4 a.m. in England. Because of time zone differences, those two events were actually hours apart. It wasn't instantaneous at all. Plus, Lord Carnarvon was already in terrible health for years. He literally moved to Egypt in the first place because the cold English winters were way too hard on his fragile lungs. A severe infection in 1923, way before penicillin was even invented, was a very standard death sentence.
And what about that terrifying detail that the mummy had a scar on its cheek, exactly matching Lord Carnarvon's fatal mosquito bite? Well, you kind of have to look at the reality of 1920s journalism. Howard Carter gave exclusive reporting rights to the Times of London. Rival newspapers, like the Morning Post and the Daily Mail, were furious. They were desperate to sell copies. So, they literally just invented the matching scar story. Actually, remember that chilling clay tablet warning we talked about earlier? That was entirely fabricated by an amateur archaeologist talking to a reporter. It never even existed.
But wait, what about the fevers and those sudden respiratory deaths of the tomb workers? Well, in 1963, a doctor from Cairo University named Ezzeddin Taha examined archaeologists and museum workers, and he found a very real biological culprit, Aspergillus niger. It's a common fungus that survives perfectly in ancient sealed tombs. When disturbed, the spores become airborne and cause severe respiratory inflammation. So it wasn't a magical curse at all. It was a fungal infection that, today, could be easily cured with basic antibiotics.
So, the crucial point is really captured by the number 73. In 2002, a study published in the British Medical Journal, along with calculations by investigator James Randi, looked at the 44 Westerners present in Egypt during the discovery, and guess what? They found absolutely no significant difference in the death rates of those who entered the tomb versus those who didn't. In fact, the average age of death for the supposedly cursed individuals was a very normal, completely healthy 73 years old.
Think about it. If the curse was real, who should be the primary targets? The people who physically opened the tomb and unwrapped the mummy, right? Yet, Lady Evelyn, one of the very first people inside, lived to be 78. Dr. Douglas Derry, the guy who literally sliced open the mummy's wrappings, lived to be 87. And Howard Carter, the man who started the whole thing, he lived for 16 more years after the discovery, dying at age 64 of natural causes. Whenever reporters asked him if he was afraid of the curse, Carter would just simply reply, "I am still alive."
Section 6. True Immortality. And this brings us to a really fascinating shift in perspective. The media focused entirely on the wrong kind of magic. See, the ancient Egyptians had this very specific belief. They believed a person only truly dies when their name is spoken for the absolute final time. Basically, when they are forgotten forever. Now, because Tutankhamun's father had been a controversial ruler who threw the country into chaos, Tut's successors deliberately tried to erase his name from the historical records. And it totally worked. For 3,000 years, the world completely forgot he ever existed. His tomb only survived the grave robbers because literally no one knew he was there. So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. By brushing away that sand in 1922, Howard Carter didn't unleash a curse. By sparking a massive global legend that put Tutankhamun's face on every newspaper in the world, Carter gave this frail, forgotten 18-year-old boy king exactly what every Egyptian pharaoh dreamed of. Carter ensured that the name Tutankhamun will never, ever be forgotten again. So, did Carter curse him, or did he grant him ultimate immortality? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the